boy, what a time we live in. This is going to be a fantastic decade where alliances and channels are coming together. And in this case, we see partner ecosystems form around end customers where multiple companies are coming together in the service of co-innovating, co-marketing, and co-selling together. Next slide, please. Awesome. So here, one of the key transitions that we are seeing is that the partnering professional is actually getting into the C-suite, into a leadership role, and chief partner officers are ascending into the C-suite. And with that, I think, as you can imagine, with any C-suite role, you have to be accountable. You have to be responsible for revenue delivery, actually, and especially against an economic backdrop. If you see the stats that we have curated from our ecosystem partners running on WorkSpan, these are some of the results that we are seeing that you can use to communicate business value of co-selling. First and foremost, even the simplest and the easiest use cases that we're seeing around co-sell is from revenue growth, greater than 20% revenue growth, just because companies are coming together and sharing pre-pipeline early. And because you're bringing each other's influence early, more number of deals are getting prosecuted as a result. Second is win rate. Contrary to popular wisdom, uh, partnering doesn't complicate deals. It actually increases your strength in the account. So when you do two partners together or three partners, as Cisco is going to talk about, what happens is you never lose. The win rates go exponentially higher than the traditional enterprise success rate of about 33% from stage three to one are lost. What we are seeing is higher, at least 33%, 30% higher than before. Third is productivity. Because you're connected on a network, the ability to work each other with each other, spanning company boundaries, what would have taken something more time, and especially connected and automated with your own account executives on one side, but also with the partners, sellers on the other side, has led to increased productivity. Co-selling as a business process is already saving 3 to 4 hours of time and of productivity of partner sales managers. And all of this is resulting in some amazing returns, 20x more return on investment. So if you look at the Action IQ case study or the SAP case study around this topic, this is 20x return on investment, 6x faster time to market. So when you have a structured process to either co-innovate with new joint solutions or co-market or co-sell, rather than each partner manager making up their own process in the field, 6x faster time to market. So you can crush the time for those new solutions around co-selling, for example. That's another best practice. And lastly, account expansions. What can I tell? Um, uh, Akbar and Nick are going to talk about how through co-selling, they've been able to talk to new lines of business. As a result, they can, to borrow Akbar's phrase, they can actually sell higher and also wider because they're attracting more lines of business than one company would have done otherwise. So a lot of value, and you can be quantified as a result. Really drive significant value for your company and present the partner organization and the value of co-selling to the larger internal company and the ecosystem through these numbers. Now, if you look at managing co-sell today, however, the individual partner managers and the leaders see this kind of a mess. And this mess is because we haven't really thought about the digitization of ecosystem process, especially around co-sell. So as a result, every partner manager working with an SI, working with a ISV, working with a hyperscaler is inventing its own process, its own spreadsheet, its own tool in the process. We've treated partner managers, differently than, let's say, direct sales with regard to prioritizing their IT requirements. And this is a pain because if you think about the business opportunity on one hand versus the IT capabilities that they've received so far, this is like cobbler's kids not having shoes. This is crazy. We got to fix this. A one-on-one co-selling is hard, and now imagine multi-partner co-selling. So when you with your ISV coming together with a channel partner or with an SI partner to drive a migration to the cloud for that ISV workload, you can imagine how exponentially hard this gets. And if you don't automate and digitize this, this is not going to be successful. To the next slide, please. And what we've seen is if there is lack of digitization around this thing, there is risk involved. So we've seen, for example, entire accounts or entire co-sell pipeline being shared with the wrong partner with spreadsheets. On spreadsheets, you can't secure fields and your their data privacy around this topic. As a result, sales ops says you simply cannot share. So either it's shut or it's open. But if you have good tools and digitization in place where you have security and you have field level security and document level security done, then people are able to share with confidence. So you don't want to leave it to the individual partner seller to decide whether data governance is managed. You want to digitize it and hence manage it and govern it. Next is if you connect your processes with partner processes and rather than have disjointed processes, this gives you so much scale right away. So you can not only repeat in one business unit, one market unit, but also across the world, across your company, and with different partners at the same time. So what can scale is revenue potential for the company in a non-linear way. Third, we are seeing is inconsistent data and the quality of that data. So with the death of the cookie and the idea that not only you have your own data, but there's 10x more data coming from the partners, you need to make sense out of this data. There's AI in this data that you can really think through in terms of creating that shared sense of truth around what's actually happening with a shared customer at the end of the day. So it's not only your influence, but also the partner influence that is counting. And there is inconsistency in that data the way we are handling it today. So having a common foundation for all that is game changing. And lastly, this is probably the most important thing: culture and mindset. We have, in many companies, especially in B2B sales, a tech mindset around account executives and superiority around who actually owns the account. That will never change. But I think this inward hierarchical model about who owns the customer is changing. There are companies that have instituted in their selling process a partner score for every deal. No deal is left behind without a partner. There are key initiatives like this happening that's challenging the culture and the mindset around it. And if you look at how hyperscalers are retiring, cloud quota, for example, or sales quota, for example, uh, giving 100% of sometimes more credit to even partner SKUs, this is changing mindsets in a very, very big way. That partners are important. They are, in fact, primary to how companies win and influence in this modern partner ecosystem. Next slide, please. Now, if you think of the larger ecosystem and how co-selling has evolved, what we feel like instead of a linear supply chain that used to happen in the channel world, where producers are far separate from the eventual consumers and reseller world, the way ecosystems are different than linear systems is the circular flywheel, if you will. So at one end of the flywheel is co-innovating to build new joint solutions. Once you have those solutions, you take them to market together. And again, the solutions that you launch, they interact with one another. And the leads that come out of those joint marketing efforts, they actually become inbound pipeline into your co-sell. And on co-sell, you're co-selling on joint accounts that you've identified. You share referrals. You're sharing opportunities directly connected with your CRM system so that you can track KPIs. And then from the revenue, you reinvest back into the relationship. So we are seeing companies really shift. For example, in Cisco's case, where they're not only doing co-sell, but also giving co-sell incentives back to partners to put money back into the flywheel to again build new solutions and co-market and then co-sell. So changing from a linear business model to more of an ecosystem flywheel is a key learning that we've had and we've tried to institute with the WorkSpan digitization that you get. Next slide, please. And here are some stats. First of all, on the network. So as you build co-sell practices with companies, choosing a network platform like WorkSpan allows you to connect with many such nodes on the network. So the network is connecting businesses with trusted partners, and every company joins only once into the network, connects their CRM, and now they're ready to work with anybody else. Pick an example. Any GSI partner here who's come on board, Wipro, Deloitte, Kyndryl. These are companies that are coming onto the WorkSpan platform, connecting their Salesforce, connecting their Dynamics, connecting their SAP CRM system. But guess what? They can already work with an SAP because they're connected. And by the way, if that workload happens to get into the cloud, let's say with AWS, they can also work with the same partner there. So it's connecting on a shared and a unified network so that the pain of actually connecting and transacting and doing data sharing is taken away with security. And every one of these companies, for example, Deloitte being an audit firm, this is very important to them. So ability to secure data, have a single sign-on from that company's perspective, and then field level data privacy that allows them the confidence to share information on the network based on privileged access to people. And lo and behold, we have 9,000 companies on the WorkSpan network today. So we are creating value, co-sell value, and abundance together. So one CTA that we have, call to action we have today is come join this network. This is a very, very valuable set of relationships and connections, much like this event that we are having here, where you're engaging with one another. This is another forum to kind of connect with businesses, connect co-sell opportunities with one another. Next slide, please. And here, if you look at the stats that we see today, 5,000 plus solutions co-innovated, 18,000 plus leads distributed, 47 billion in co-sell pipeline, and that is shared between companies, and close to 1 billion in funds that is managed through WorkSpan today. So this thing is also operating at scale now. The idea here is that if you engage in the ecosystem flywheel, you can join at any place. For example, you can join with co-sell first. And as you start to mature your co-sell business, two additional best practices kick in. One is, hey, how can you accelerate co-sell with co-marketing, which is jointly marketed events? Can we make them a shared pipeline into your co-sell? That's a key best practice we have. Another one is, how do you make co-sell repeatable? So if you have joint solutions, your co-sell velocity actually increases because both sales teams know exactly what the joint solution is and how it is positioned to different buying centers and markets. So here's a great example. Enter with co-sell, you can then move backwards into co-market and co-innovate, steps of the process. Some other companies start with tech partnerships, for example, where they start directly with joint solutions first. They have a whole certification process to build and encourage API-based development or platform-based development, and then they follow the co-market and the co-sell flywheel. So it doesn't matter. Start where you feel comfortable, where your business model lends you the maximum leverage, and then you will see that you're participating in this flywheel. Now, what is the tech behind this thing? And this is fundamentally important. We call this the four in a box model. So on the left-hand side, let's imagine it's you and your company. Let's imagine you run Salesforce or Dynamics as your CRM. It's your sales teams will spend all their time in there. What WorkSpan does, it connects directly to your Salesforce system, and you have complete control over what is shared, how much it is shared, and we don't alter your opportunity object at all. So those referrals come into WorkSpan. Similarly, on the other side with the partner, there's co-equal sharing. WorkSpan becomes this neutral middle ground where companies share their co-sell opportunities with one another. And the partner managers actually have insight and visibility with access into WorkSpan, while the sellers remain in their respective CRM systems. So what it does is it brings the co-sell business process to the seller directly in their native habitat. In each company's native habitat, so they don't leave those workspaces. But at the same time, the connective glue of WorkSpan powers the partner managers to work with one another. So what we feel like the hourglass, where the partner manager becomes the bottleneck, in this case, is completely relieved with the expanded bandwidth to deal with such co-sell motions. So one benchmark we have is if you do more than 30 deals with AWS, for example, you absolutely need co-sell with AWS. Under 30 deals, you can probably manage on spreadsheets, and updating 30 deals, one a day kind of still becomes hard. But the moment you exceed that volume, I would highly recommend looking at co-sell digitization as a business process. All right, next slide, please. And not just any company, but from your CRM system, WorkSpan provides a packaged solution to connect with all three hyperscalers. So you're going to hear from AWS today. But we and AWS partners today about how this all works. But in addition, WorkSpan also offers the same connection. So one connection to your CRM, but also directly connects to Microsoft Partner Center and Google Partner Advantage. The idea here is that these connections are actually bidirectional. So inbound from the hyperscalers into your CRM also happens through WorkSpan, so that you can accept a deal, accept an opportunity referral from these partners. You can connect it to your opportunity or to your account, if you're already already engaged in an opportunity, or you can also create a net new ones. And we are seeing a huge shift here. Whereas in the early part of the coastal journey, we are seeing that ISV partners and SI partners are moving a lot of coastal opportunities towards the hyperscalers. In the last 6 months, I've seen a real shift where the equilibrium is being reached, where since these large hyperscalers are driving cloud consumption contracts with large companies, they are equally giving opportunities back into ISVs and GSIs. So if you're not participating in the co-sell motion with hyperscalers, you're certainly missing out. Next slide, please. But at the same time, it is not just with the hyperscalers, and Cisco is doing, as an example, co-sell motion with hyperscalers, but also what it is doing really well is connecting with ISVs and resellers. So three in a box, business to partner connection with what they call digitized co-sell. So it's connecting your CRM with WorkSpan, but also connecting the ISV partner and the reseller partner together. So on a same deal, multiple parties can be together, or different co-equal partners can be together. So the pattern repeats itself. So it could be ISV partners with GSI partners. It could be ISV partners with hardware partners. It could be ISVs with GSIs, but also with reseller partners. So multi-partner as well is possible with this network business model. So very exciting times, and this kind of digitization has kind of eluded us for a while, which kind of meant these partner managers were working on spreadsheets in non-scalable ways, and as a result, they were not being amplified in their role. So we are seeing that with the kind of digitization, a massive amplification can actually happen. Next slide, please. Now, when we abstract this back and think about what capabilities you need to put in place, irrespective of the tool that you use, what are the 5 key capabilities that you need to put in place in order for this ecosystem management co-sell process to take place? Number 1 is define an ecosystem business process. And the more you define this process and educate your internal teams around this process, the easier it gets. The business process may start in your company, it may end in another company, but at least everybody's available and visible in terms of how they participate in this business process. Second is think about your data strategy, your ecosystem data hub. How do you share data? What are the operational norms around doing it? Which fields are shared, which fields are not? And is this policy consistent? And having such an ecosystem data hub is the next big thing. 2 years ago, we were talking about customer data hub, which is what marketing teams have pioneered in terms of how do we engage with customer data, for example, to make data-driven marketing decisions. This is the equivalent of that movement for the partnering world. So if you're a partner leader who has not yet figured out the ecosystem data hub strategy, this is the right time. Because guess what, in a couple of years, the value of the partner data is going to far exceed marketing data and even your own data. So this is very, very important. The third is access control. Oftentimes, one of the key hardest things with partnering is figuring out how do we control access, what is inside the firewall versus outside the firewall. Business allows you to take risks. Every partnering comes with risks. But how do you manage that control and manage that risk through controls and governance is what you need to do. So your ecosystem access control strategies need to be in place. Fourth is ecosystem intelligence. This is not just having a data hub or an access to data, but how do you utilize this data to make business decisions associated with it? So how can you go from an ecosystem insight into action very, very quickly? So this capability, this learning capability on the basis of ecosystem is going to be very critical. And then lastly, multi-partner ecosystems. Partnering 2 ways is going to become table stakes. What's going to become really, really important is how do you actually integrate multiple partners into going to a shared end customer at the end of the day, because that's what end customers need. They need solutions. So if you're participating in markets like 5G, for example, or cloud migrations or security, these things don't exist in a vacuum. You need to secure an application that is already sitting on a cloud. So imagine, three connections right away. So two-way partnering is going to become table stakes, but how do you actually manage and influence a cohort of partners, set of multiple partners towards an aligned ecosystem motion that goes to end customers? So these are the five key capabilities ecosystem leaders need to think about today as they set about their organization, set about the investments that they need to make, set about the teams and the roles and responsibilities that they need to create, that they should think about these five key capabilities. And lastly, I'll end with the 6 best practices that we've learned doing co-sell with companies. Number one is co-sell is not about you and your partner. It's really about the customer lifecycle. So don't think partner lifecycle in this case. Think beyond that and put the customer in the center. The customer is actually at the center of this flywheel, and they are the ones around which the co-sell motion is derived. So as a result, you will see that every business process that you've thought of, before changes. Take for example incentives. It becomes life cycle incentives, not just giving incentives to partner during sale or margin benefit, but because it's about the end customer and the customer is in the cloud, we want to incentivize for resell as well, right? And renewals, for example. So things like that become important. Second is making co-sell repeatable. It's not just one and done. Most successful co-sell partners also have a joint solution. It's not an anomaly. It's a really successful co-sellers have a joint solution, period. Because it makes identification of a co-sell opportunity that much more easier for each sales team to know, oh, we are selling that joint solution. So if you look at the tremendous success, for example, that NetApp has had with Cisco, the FlexPod system, very recognizable joint solution. And similarly, there are other examples as well from the portfolio. Having a joint solution makes co-sell repeatable. Third is this data sharing and privacy, as I said. Don't let individual partner managers invent this in the field. You decide as the ecosystem leader. You decide what you share. And if you enable this highway, everybody gets to go across the bridge. Fourth is metrics. Without metrics, we are flying blind. So establish co-sell metrics like ecosystem qualified leads, partner influence scores, things like that. And there should be out-of-the-box metrics like those that come out of WorkSpan that help you understand how to measure this. For example, understanding partner influence and splitting it across partners for a given deal. How do you do that? Having governance process around it is important. Accountability. No partner system, no partner motion survives without accountability. So make sure your partner managers actually get on bi-weekly or monthly, depending on what your frequency is. They actually get together on cadence calls and they look at a joint set of pipeline and joint set of accounts together and decide where they are proactively partnering and where they are not. Because candidly, much of partnering could be wasting time if you're not really focused on the outcomes. And lastly, multi-partner. We have seen exponential results from this motion. So this is a best practice. Start with co-sell with one partner, but then figure out how does this partner transact by bringing in a reseller or a hyperscaler. And that really turbocharges your revenue. Instead of $1 in direct sales, this really exponentially increases it. And then here are some amazing companies that have done and come along on this journey. You're not alone. This is a huge motion in the market. EBM platforms are driving cost efficiency and revenue growth. And there are a lot of these benefits that you can get by getting on the co-sell train. So Chip, with that, I want to hand back the floor to you. It was a delight to talk about what we've learned in the co-sell motion in the industry and how can we work with everyone here.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. And by the way, you gave away your location with the police driving in the background. it was not a U.S. Police siren, so I know you're dialing in from Germany today. So So that's great. We actually do have Amit, a couple of questions. So and Rachel, you get to go first. You get a special gold star because you actually uploaded your image in the in there, so we get to see you as well. So Rachel asks, how are leads distributed, assuming there are multiple companies that do the same thing in the WorkSpan ecosystem?
Oh, what a great question. So typically in the channel world, you would distribute a lead to one partner, and then that, let's say, that partner gets to work with that prospect, and some time passes by and so on and so forth, and you never hear back from them because there's no system to actually track the opportunities that come out of it. So there are three ways in which leads are different. One is you can give the same lead to multiple partners, because it could be different motions associated with it. So one partner may be helping you with security on the same deal, whereas another one can be doing the cloud migration itself. So we are seeing in the ecosystem world leads being handled differently. Second is the connection between leads to opportunities is much, much stronger because of connected systems. So a lead becoming a co-sell op is a very, very key process to do. So those are some key things that we've learned doing co-sell leads versus, let's say, typical channel lead systems.
That's awesome, Amit. Another question, and we'll keep it as we're a little bit over time. So Sang Kim asks, I would love to hear if WorkSpan has insights around managing friction around differing sales processes versus a shared CRM platform between co-selling partners. This is a great question as well.
Yeah, there are different kinds of friction around different sales processes. So you may have to get a little bit more specific around which ones you're talking about. So, for example, a common one is, there are typically some large partners who always get, favors. So the smaller partners, the emerging partners, they see friction because, they don't get the attention. So that's one kind of friction where through fair trade or things like those kinds of processes, friction can be eliminated. There's friction between sales teams. So between the sales team and the partnering team, for example, how can we eliminate friction because they're happening because of information gaps, and how much is shared, and with which partner is it shared, and how do you actually give the right splits or the value back to each partner. So we are seeing that essentially all kinds of friction can be eliminated by giving shared visibility, and then driving, in exchange for giving that visibility, driving that accountability that removes this kind of friction. So there's a lot of insight depending on where the friction is. Is it internal or is it with the partner ecosystem? There's also friction because of different business models, for example. So co-selling as a business model can augment resell versus, let's say, indirect. So that's another thing that can be eliminated with this kind of visibility.
Fantastic, Amit.